Alright guys, what's going on? SG Leo here. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be going over the official weapons tier list for New World. So sit back, grab a snack, grab a drink, relax, and let's get into this. Alright big dog, so before we get started with this tier list video, I do just need to make a few things clear. This is for PvE content only, so solo PvE content, group PvE content. This is not for PvP weapons. That'll be a whole new list on its own. Hopefully that one will be up a couple days after this one's up. So keep that in mind. Second of all, I'm looking at these weapons on how good they are on their own. I'm not looking at them with how good they are combined with other weapons, because that would be a 2-3 hour video to go through all the weapon combinations. I might do one on like the meta combinations, but I'm not going to do one on every combination, at least not anytime soon. And third of all, this is my opinion, so if you don't agree with it, I'm sorry, but let me know down below where you'd put these weapons, and I'll also leave a link to this tier maker so you can do one on your own. Alright, so let's get started. So we're just going to kind of go in order here. I actually kind of like the order that they're in. So first off, we have the Fire Staff. So the Fire Staff is a very good weapon, really fun, not actually that hard to use. I know a lot of people think it's like this pretty difficult weapon to use. I don't think any of the weapons in this game are like skill expressive really. It's more about just knowing your timings and knowing when and how to use the ability. So Fire Staff, although it used to probably be the best weapon early on, right now I'm just going to kind of put it in the average, just above average tier here. Although its damage output is pretty high and it still does good chunks of damage, I just don't see a ton of people wanting to take this over things like the bow or the spear. Even the Rapier outdoes it, I believe, in damage currently. It's just, it does its job, don't get me wrong, but especially now with mutations and a lot of mobs starting to be resistant to things like fire and void and ice, these type of elemental weapons have started to become not as good for specific situations, and I have to take every situation into account for these weapons. So it's going to sit in the very good tier. It's still good for solo content, but when it comes to group stuff, that's where the staff starts to fall off, should I say. All right, next, I'm going to do the Warhammer. Warhammer is, I'm going to put it very good. Solid weapon. The CC4's great. Almost every tank in the game is running this along with the sword and shield. Its damage output isn't as high as it used to be, but its crowd control capabilities is just ridiculous. Using this alongside the sword and shield, one of the best combinations in the game. Again, though, we're just ranking this off of its solo capabilities, so it's got to just be above average. It's not going to blow you away, but again, its crowd control is really, really good, and anybody would like to have a Warhammer tank on their team. So, very good. Not great, not the best, but very good. All right, next we have the Life Staff, and the Life Staff is going to be my very first top tier, S tier, the best, whatever you want to call it, weapon in the game. Yes, there are mobs, like I said earlier, that are going to be resistant to nature damage. However, a Life Staff is always useful. Everybody wants a Life Staff user on their team. Everyone wants a healer on their team. And healers overall, they still do tons of damage, and they keep you alive. You're never going to not want a Life Staff user, and I think Life Staff users get really underappreciated in this game. I've never seen like so much hate for healers in a game before. It seems like whenever I'm in world chat or global chat, everyone's always just flaming Life Staff users for being Life Staff users. Like, oh, don't use a real weapon and blah, 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 blah. But it's like, we need these guys, because if we don't have healers, man, these dungeons in this game, we're not getting through them. I'm sorry, you're not getting through them without a healer. So I have to put it in S tier. It's the best weapon in the game right now. I just have to do that. So next up, I'm going to go with the Musket. Musket, probably the worst weapon in the game for solo content, especially when it comes to group PvE, things like dungeons and that. Its best ability requires you to stay still and fire off your 5 shots. And if you can't get all those shots off because an enemy comes and gets you, or you're about to get hit and then CC chain, you're losing a lot of damage. Although it's still pretty good, just out running around the world, there's just much better options than the Musket. Solid weapon. Again, I don't think any weapon in this game isn't viable, but if I had to put, like I said, if I have to put these in a tier list, this one is going to be the worst in the game right now. So if you're thinking around the Musket, I'd advise against it. I would prefer somebody be using the bow, but it's kind of up to you, I guess, too. So I got to put it down here. I'm sorry. Next up, I'm going to do the Blunderbuss. It's average. It's solid. Not great. It's pretty underwhelming. It's my favorite weapon in the game, though. I have a ton of fun using it. The damage output on it is actually pretty good. The CC chains on it aren't great, but they're okay. And I just feel like New World, the developers, just haven't decided what they want this weapon to be yet. They kind of released it as kind of like a Warhammer secondary almost. Like if you wanted to run this instead of the Warhammer type of thing. Just because it doesn't have a ton of damage and the CC on it is okay, but it's just not, both just feel like they're not as good as they should be. So I have to put it down here. It's definitely not better than either of these two, but it's definitely better than the musket because like I said, the musket is trash. So next up, we got the Ice Gauntlet. I'm going to put that in very good. It's good. It does good damage. The gauntlets in general have just fallen a lot over the course of the last year of this game being out. They used to be ridiculously good. I know a lot of combinations with the Ice Gauntlet are really, really good, but on its own, it's really not that great. Again, there's just better weapons for damage. Yes, it has good CC for the most part, but it can be inconsistent just because it's not point and click. The slow on it is decent, but it's also been nerfed throughout the year. I just don't think it's as good as it used to be, and there's, again, just better options. Speaking of gauntlets, we got the Voyage Gauntlet next. I'm going to put this down here with the Blunderbuss. Just average. It is easily one of the best combinations of the game when paired with the Life Staff. Don't get me wrong. If not the best combination right now, it's super good together. However, the Void Gauntlet on its own just isn't that great. It wasn't good on its release, and they buffed it, and it still doesn't feel as good. It does good damage, and in little bursts is how I feel about it. But when it comes to running dungeons and things like that, the only time I want to see a Void Gauntlet user is if it's on my healer. Otherwise, I'm not going to really be picking a Void Gauntlet user as... Like, if they're running Void Gauntlet as their primary, no. I'm sorry. I don't want that in my dungeon, so... Sorry, Void Staff, Void Gauntlet users, but I gotta put you down here. Alright, next up, Sword and Shield. The next top tier on my list. Easily the best weapon in the game right now. You can toss it between that and the Life Staff. These two are ridiculous. The Sword and Shield, you need it on a tank. If your tank does not have this, he's trolling. It has the ability to have the longest stun in the game, and this chain CC you can do with it is ridiculous. The taunting ability on it is amazing. Once you have your gem on it, it's the best tank weapon in the game. If you're not running this as a tank, you're trolling. It's that good. Feels great, feels amazing, and I believe as of currently, this is the 3rd of October right now, that's the recording of this. I believe right now, this weapon has the possibility to do the most damage, have the highest DPS possible, so ridiculously good. I would say it's overpowered, but I feel like a lot of these other weapons are just underpowered compared to what they used to be, so, and I think the Sword and Shield just hasn't been touched that much compared to the rest, so I think it's rightfully balanced right now. I just think the other weapons need a little bit of love, so gotta put it up there, though. The Rapier is great. Rapier does a ton of damage. The only downside to the Rapier, and with a lot of DPS weapons, is they don't have a lot of escape. And especially when you're trying to be a DPS player with the Rapier, which is the main case I see with it, and that's what I'm judging it off of, is you can get in, but it's really hard to get out once you get in. Sure, you have your little ability to dash out, but I see more people using that as an aggressive maneuver instead of a defensive maneuver. So on its own, it's not great for just being a DPS, because as a DPS player, you're usually pretty squishy. You can get one shot by some bosses if you're not careful. So if you're that close to them, like you have to be with the Rapier, it can be a problem. So I got to put it at great, because its damage is insane, but the risk reward to it is almost not worth it. So gonna put it there. Next up, I'm gonna do the Spear. Spear is also I would say this is A tier, but Spear is great, phenomenal weapon, awesome damage. The stun with it is really good. The sweep ability with it is really good. Again, only downside to it is a lot of people are running a, light armor build with it. Pretty squishy, so if you do mess up your combo or you do get caught out, you are going to die, especially, again, in these higher level dungeons. So, again, a lot of these DPS weapons kind of have the same issue of the sense of They do a lot of damage, but you don't have any escape. So the spear is a little bit higher ranked on my list compared to the rapier, but like in my head, but only because it does have that stun and that sweep to kind of allow you to get away if need be, where the rapier only has the one ability, and most people are using that to engage instead of disengage. So spear is got to stay in the great tier. All right, next up, I'm going to do the Great Axe, another great weapon. I feel like the only thing holding this weapon back from being in top tier is I feel like no one has really understood how they want to use this weapon yet. Since it does slash damage, and a lot of people don't want to be running 2 slash damage weapons, and a lot of tanks would run the Great Axe, but they're already running the Sword and Shield. So I feel like people are taking the Sword and Shield over the Great Axe, and then using the Warhammer as their secondary. So the Great Axe has kind of fallen into this area where it does a ridiculously good amount of damage, and it does have okay CC. But since it does slash damage, and people are already running the Sword and Shield, it's just really underused. So you have started seeing some Great Axe and Warhammer builds, which are really, really good. And I've started to see a lot of people running light armor, and then they go Great Axe and Hatchet, and they're unkillable, which is really good. But again, I think the weapon's just at this weird spot where nobody really knows how to use it or the best way to use it yet. So although its damage is high, its CC is okay. It's just not as good as these other 2 weapons right now. Maybe once we kind of find a really good meta for it, it'll bump up, but as of now, I just got to put it here. So next up, we'll do the Hatchet. Hatchet is S tier, of course, top tier. It is one of the best weapons. Has the potential to do the highest DPS for sure. The Berserk tree is insane. Being able to not die. I've seen tons of people running Sword and Shield and Hatchet recently, and I know they both do slash damage, and that was kind of my point with the Great Axe. But the difference is the abilities and passives on the Hatchet are the best in the game. It's insane. It's a really, really good weapon. And I've even started seeing tanks start running Hatchet and Warhammer instead, just because the Hatchet is that good. So it's honestly starting to compete with the Sword and Shield. I just think a lot of people like the Shield right now, specifically just the Shield tree over the Hatchet. But I'm starting to see a meta shift, and I honestly think that the Hatchet will start to take over the Sword and Shield as the primary tank weapon, unless they deliver some honestly much needed nerfs to it. But for now, it's staying in the best tier. All right, then we have finally the bow. Bow, again, great weapon, super fun to use. It does have that escape with the evade shot, which is super good. It does tons of damage. There's a reason that this is the most used weapon right now. It's that good, and it's fun to use. Who doesn't like feeling like a badass archer, right? Like, who doesn't like feeling like Hawkeye run around, especially in like PvP? I know I'm not rating this on its PvP capability, but it's super fun in PvP. In PvE, it's even super fun to use. It's one of the most fun weapons I've used. And just like rolling around, whipping out shots, charging up shots, and just doing tons of damage feels so, so, so good with the bow. That's why it's got to be up here. It's very close to S tier. I got to be honest. It's very, very close. But again, on its own, it just doesn't have enough escapability other than that evade shot. And even that evade shot doesn't make you immune. So you can be hit. So it is kind of a pain sometimes when you do get caught out with that thing. But it's really fun. Would 100% recommend. And although the Greatsword isn't out yet, I don't have the option for it. I probably could have went and found an image and used it for this. But honestly, right now, the Greatsword, if it was here, I would be putting it in the S tier. I would honestly probably put it in its own category above everything else. Because right now, the Greatsword, if it's released how it is right now on the player test server, it will be the most used weapon by far. It is so freaking good. Its damage is insane. It would make a great DPS weapon. It will make a great tank weapon. Whatever you want to use it for, it is insane. I honestly see it taking over the Sword and Shield for tanks because it is that good. The Greatsword is definitely going to need some much needed nerfs. But so far, New World and Amazon has not said anything about nerfing it. So I'm going to have to put that weapon in its own category. Again, if the Greatsword was here, it would be all the way up here. It is far and above the best weapon right now. So I got to put it up there. But anyways, guys, let me know what you think of this tier list. Give me your thoughts down below. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Where would you put your weapons at? Again, sorry if I put your weapon low or if you think that I put your weapon too high. I don't know why you'd think that, but you never know. But don't forget, guys, before you head out, hit that subscribe button, turn on notification bell so you know when I upload. And let me know what other tier lists you'd like to see for New World. You know, would you like to see gem tier lists, things like that? Let me know. I'll try to get them made and uploaded for you guys. But thanks for your time, guys. Appreciate it. Stay awesome. See you in the next one. Peace.
I lost my best friend to 23. She left her body in Harvard above me.